Hi guys, welcome to part two. This is probably going to end up being another long video. So what I'm going to do after I upload it is I'm going to go through and make chapter markers so that you guys could jump around if you don't want to watch the whole thing. The first thing I want to address here is one of the comments I received from Thomas, and he had said that you're putting too much thought into your current sob, and I don't think he's aware or not, but I mean, over the time that I was searching, which was approximately 6 years up to the time that it was found. I searched from 2014 to, of course, 2020, and then I stopped searching when it was found. But I'm still kind of actively in the community. But I've had many, many sobs, and yes, all of those sobs, you become, confident with them, and you're like, I'm at 100%, it's there, and then of course you go there, and it wasn't there, and then you come up with another sob, and you're like, 110%, this is it. And then you go there. So, yeah, I mean, I was jumping all over the place. That was the entire problem. I had many solves, just like all searchers. And the problem was you would hold on to them because you couldn't release them, right? That was part of the reason why I did the grammar study, because I wanted to focus on the poem, make it easier to get rid of older solves so that I can move on, right? And I wanted to try to eliminate all bias by going directly to the poem. And it took me until 2017 to realize that I have to do that. And most of that is thanks to Sean Dodson, because he was one of the coolest poem purists that I know. And he had a lot of good advice. And at first, I didn't get along with him too well, but I started listening to him, and he made a lot of sense. So that's what I did. But I mean, I've had my first sob, I think, was up at Grebe Lake. Okay. And of course, it was all based on the story and the books and scrapbooks and so on and so forth. But Forrest Fenn took his coach, Chauncey, here when Coach Chauncey was dying. And then when his father was dying, he took his father here. So it made sense that he would go here when he's dying, right? So, I mean, that was like my first sob. And my where warm water salt at the time was Madison Junction, but instead of going down this way, I went upstream, and then I ended up over here, and then up at it was a pretty convoluted sob, and it was wrong. But anyway, I had a sob there. I had let me turn off. I have an overlay on in here that I could put a topographical map that has information of the quads and what who owns them. Like I could zoom in and click on an area and find out who owns it. I have like add-ons that I'll add on to Google Pro, and part of that is a topographical map that's automatically lined up. And the nice thing about it is I can go in and see names of places. Okay, but let me turn it off because it's kind of getting in the way now. But so basically, yes, Coach Chauncey and Grebe Lake. That was, I believe, my first sob. Now, in Wyoming, I'm talking about. I had solves in New Mexico, and of course, it was the famous, Agua Fria and Eagle's Nest, and I mean, the same place that everybody in New Mexico tends to look around. And of course, that was wrong. But I was mostly drawn to Taos Pueblo, up in that area there, mainly because Joseph Henry Sharp spent his summers in New Mexico, and he spent his winters Montana painting Crow Indians up at the cabin that Forrest Fenn bought and had moved from the reservation over here down to Cody. So yeah, I mean, and then I had, of course, northwestern Colorado over there by Dinosaur National Park, and then I had, the home of Brown was, of course, Brown's Park, and my I think my where warm water salt was Flaming Gorge, and then you would go down there on a boat. I mean, all those old sobs. I quickly got rid of a lot of them in 2014 because I determined that I needed to get more control and focus on the most likely area where I thought it would be, and I thought that it would be in Wyoming, and that's primarily because of the book and because of all the references to Yellowstone, and just, I mean, I believe that Forrest Fenn's heart was in Wyoming. His wallet was in New Mexico. New Mexico was a good place to set up his business, to be around rich people that can then go ahead and provide money that he would then use to go up to Cody and invest into Indian stuff and do his real hobby that he really loved. And I believe that Peggy did not want to move to Wyoming. So they ended up, the best bet instead when they left Lubbock was to go to Santa Fe. It made perfect sense, especially since Peggy was into pottery, and I think she was even a pottery teacher, right? So that made total sense to raise a family and stuff. You're not going to do it up in rugged Wyoming. It just didn't make sense. But his heart was here. That's what I'll always believe. So anyway, I had that solve, and then I had solves down by Lander. Okay, up of course in Six Canyon, right out of Lander over here. I had solves at this reservoir here. I had solve at Louis Lake over here. I had solves down by South Pass and Atlantic City. I had solves by Independence Rock. I had solve in the one that I was talking about in the last video was that Sarcophagus Butte, which is it's somewhere over here where Lucky MC Mine is, and then Castle Gardens is up around here, and Hellsap Acre, of course, is over here. Casper's over here, just to tell you where we're oriented. And I was into that sob, of course, 100%. And then all of the sobs up here, 110%. Up by Dunor, where the log flumes are, up at Warm Springs Mountain, 100% on that one. Basically, Kerwin, that was 100%. Meadowlark Lake, and then of course the Medicine Wheel, and and then all up here by Clark's Fork, because of Hemingway. When Hemingway first in 1928, first time he came to Wyoming, he stayed here at the Spiro Wigwam Ranch. That's the one that I showed you guys. If you zoom in and you look at the lodge, it looks like a clock. It's supposed to be a spear, though. But if this were a clock, that would be roughly 8 o'clock. Well, this is where Hemingway stayed when he wrote A Farewell to Arms, which is the book that he wrote in 1928. Okay, and Forrest Fenn messes that book up in the Thrill of the Chase. He switches the plots for A Farewell to Arms while he's talking about For Whom the Bell Tolls. Well, anyway, if you look at that 8 o'clock and then you go over to the wheel, just quickly, because I've discussed this before, when you go over to the medicine wheel and you look at the medicine wheel, the sun line is 8 o'clock. So, this is odd things. And, but that was the first time I was looking at the wheel, and I still wasn't a poem purist. So, like everybody else, I was trying to look at scrapbooks and look at all of this other stuff and study Hemingway, And then, like I said, Hemingway stayed in the Bighorn Mountains in 1928. The second time that he came back to Wyoming, Hemingway stayed at Red Lodge in Montana, and he spent a lot of time up by Clark's Fork. If you read the story about it, he went up here and he threw his father's gun up in the woods, and he shot a grizzly bear, and then he got injured, and they had to bring him down to Cody and have surgery, and then he went back up. So he spent a lot of time up in this area, all right, up by Cook City and by Clark's Fork. So of course, I got the poem to work up there, and I was twisting that poem to go anywhere, and that was part of the problem, because if you look at the poem and you don't solve it, and you start looking at the clues and try to use them on a map, there's literally millions of places that they'll all fit. Like I said, no matter where your War Womaners halt, you're going to probably end up at a high elevation at some headwaters. It might be, hot springs. It could be anything, right? Well, you're always going to go down a canyon. It's common sense. It's going to be a canyon there, right? And then no place for them to meet. Well, people would start looking at areas, and they would start trying to associate names with Meek, and that's not the way to do it. I mean, for example, even at the wheel, both Sam and I, right? Sam's original sob, when he went there for 2 weeks in 2014, it was at Porcupine Falls over here. So Sam was staying at the campground, and he went to Porcupine Falls, and he went all up here. Now, he already knew about Try to Wheel, but he didn't do the right thing, and neither did I initially, right? So he thought that it was at Porcupine Falls. But the reason for that was that after he'd seen the Try to Wheel, He did like everybody else did. Now, let me turn on that thing again. Here's the topographical map. So he would stay at the campground over here, and then he went. I think I said it, he spent kind of like a week or two up here. And of course, they went and looked at the wheel, but he didn't look around the wheel. He got sucked in by looking at the map. He was trying to associate. Okay, so now he knows where to start, but then he blew it by trying to associate all the other clues with things on the map and map names. So you could probably see where I'm headed with this. But if his warm waters halted up here and then he ended up down, because this is down in elevation, right? From here. So if you ended up down and you're in Porcupine Falls, he started going down, like here's no place for the meet because why? Because it's Devil's Canyon. But here's the problem with that, right? So Porcupine Creek goes all the way through Devil's Canyon and then ends up going over here and hooks up to the Bighorn in Montana, right? But the problem is, look where it hooks up. Okay, look what Devil's Playground is. That no place for the meet, right? So Devil's Playground is where that means. This is no place for the meet. You can say so, right? And then over here somewhere, there's a place called Triple Echo Peak. And you can stand up there, like over here, I think it might be. And if you yell into the canyon, you'll hear a triple echo. Pretty cool, right? And then, if you start looking at names, you could come up with all different kinds of things. Like Melody Falls is over here. I think it's called Melody Falls. And Tillett's Hole. And, so when you're going through the poem like that, like I said, you're always going to find a canyon anywhere. All canyons are going to have water in it. It's just not the way to work. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, it's so easy to get sidetracked in solves. And that's part of the problem. And that's why I did what I did, because it's very easy to get off track. And the only way to stay on track is to stay with the poem. Okay, so now I just want to give you kind of get into the timeline mode of what was going on back in 2010. So the first thing is, this is the last known time that we know that Forrest Fenn was in Wyoming around the time that he released his book. If you look at this video here, it says May 20th, 2011, but it was actually shot on the week of September 20th through the 25th in 2010. That is when the Rendezvous Royale in Cody, Wyoming took place. The fashion show, everything in this video that you can see here, like I said, just search for this video and you'll easily find it. I also have a link to it somewhere in one of my playlists. But you'll see Forrest Fenn and Peggy there. So we know for a fact that Forrest Fenn, and the day that he was at the fashion show, that was September 22nd, 2010. Now, we also know from the court documents that K-Pro showed that Forrest Fenn finally gave us a year in the court documents, now that the chase is over. He hid the treasure chest in 2010. Now, whether or not he hid it when he was on this trip, nobody could really prove that. I think he did. I believe that when his wife was there, he took off out of the hotel, and it's only from Cody. He could have been in the mountains roughly in an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours max, hid the thing, spent maybe even 2 hours there, and then been back 2 hours again, which would bring him back in time for dinner, okay, with his wife. They would never notice that. Forrest Fenn would go on business trips alone all the time, but here he was with Peggy. And even when he was there, she knows he has a lot of friends around the Cody area, so he's going to step out. Nobody's going to suspect anything. Now, I don't know if they drove there or if they took a plane there or had Shiloh fly him up there. But Forrest Fenn could have went in Santa Fe and taken the chest and the gold, put it in the airplane at the hangar, and then went back home in Santa Fe. And then when Shiloh went to the plane to fly Forrest up there, Shiloh had no idea that Forrest Fenn was actually bringing the treasure up there. And then they put the plane, they park the plane, and then they go to the hotel, and then Forrest Fenn goes back to the plane, and then he goes to the rental car, brings it there, takes the chest and the gold out of the plane, puts it in the car. Now he's got the gold in Wyoming from Santa Fe, and it was no problem at all. He didn't go on a commercial airplane or anything like that. So this is a very easy task for him to do. Anyway, here's some screenshots from that. There's one. It's at 1 minute and 51 seconds. There's Forrest Fenn and Peggy at the fashion show. And here's another picture. Okay, same show. There's at 1 minute and 37 seconds. I think those are the only two times that you'll see him in this video. I could be wrong. Now, the second thing I want to address is I discussed with a couple of people the crow. They were mentioning the Axeman picture that's at the end of the Thrill of the Chase and discussing the bird that's up in the moon. And I'm telling you that that's this bird. It's a crow. This casting was made in Philadelphia, and it was purchased by Joseph Henry Sharp, and it was made by a company, like I said, from Philadelphia. And what Joseph Henry Sharp liked about this is it represents Philadelphia because that's where the company that made it is from, and it represents all the crow that the United States government paid him to go up to Montana and paint. So he painted all the Crow Indians. So he loved the crow. And there's the crow. This, it's sitting on a shelf. This shelf is inside the cabin that Forrest Fenn donated to the Cody Museum. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to get in the museum and actually get close-up photography of what's on there, what's on Sharp's desk, and so on. But that's the crow that's in the moon. Here's another shot of that crow, and it was made by a company called Rockwood. Okay. So anyway, I believe that that's the crow. If you flip this around the opposite direction, it's almost identical to what's up here in the crescent moon. You see the guy here with the axe. I believe that this is a reference to all the lumberjacks, because that's the whole thing with the wheel, right? The Coalition for the Wheel with Francis Brown and the whole deal. When it began in like 1988, and it ended around 2004. And then recently they've expanded the protected area, and then they renamed the wheel, actually, I think in 2011. I don't remember exactly when. But the whole thing was that the lumberjacks out of Powell and so on, the Wyoming lumberjacks, it's a specific company, and I think the company was from Sheridan. I don't remember. But the Indians were fighting them, all of the Plains Indians, because they wanted to go through and harvest the lumber all around the wheel. Now, there's a lot of important plants that the Indians use there, and sage, for example, that they use in their ceremony, and they don't want the land disrupted. They were really pissed off. If you watch my video of Francis Brown, he's like, Devil's Tower, we lost. We got mountain climbers, and we're destroying the Devil's Tower. We lost that. So he said right in that video, he goes, the medicine wheel is our last stand. We're not going to back down. And I believe that ultimately Forrest Fenn and the senator, Al Simpson, and his other friends that were rich, I believe that he actually helped them raise money to fight the United States government in order to stop them from developing at the wheel. That's the whole thing that was about. Now, of course, you got stars in the sky. And like I said, the whole thing with the wheel is it's for the Indians to observe the stars. That's the whole point. You could think of it as an observation deck or a stellarium, or where you observe the skies. That's what they did back then, and that's what the ancient people did. They didn't have television. They would go out and look at the skies and tell stories about the skies and the constellations and the stars and so on and so forth. That's what it was all about. So you have the lumberjack down here trying to destroy it, and the Crow Indians are battling him, right? And that was the reference that I had to that. So I don't really want to get into it that much deeper, but there you go. There's your crow in my opinion. And like I said, you could find it at the Joseph Henry Sharp cabin in Cody, Wyoming, unless they moved it. See, sometimes they cycle exhibits. They'll have every year they'll change what's in the cabin, because they have a whole bunch of stuff that they got from Forrest. They got 9 linear square feet of shelf space dedicated just to Henry Sharp in the McCracken Research Center and in the archives, and they'll cycle what's in the cabin. But if you find this in there, it'll be on that shelf. And that's the other association with the Crow. Joseph Henry Sharp, like I said, he loved painting Crow Indians. He lived in New Mexico part of the year, and he would go back and forth from Montana to New Mexico, Montana to New Mexico. And I always thought it was weird that because there is a museum in New Mexico for Joseph Henry Sharp, but yet Forrest Fenn never donated anything to that place. He's putting everything up in Cody. Why? Why didn't he put it down here? You know, except for the cabin, obviously. But and all of the research, Forrest Fenn wrote 2 books on Joseph Henry Sharp, and all of his research material is all in Cody. There's nothing in New Mexico. Why is that? You know, you have to ask yourself those kind of questions. It's just really odd. Anyway, the Coalition for the Wheel, a lot of the guys that were founding fathers of that organization, including Francis Brown, at one point lived in New Mexico at the Taos Pueblo. And the Coalition for the Wheel, they fought for water rights in New Mexico. Okay, but it's out by the wheel, by Wheeler's Peak, Taos, you know, the whole thing is all the connection to the wheel in New Mexico. And that's all directly related to Francis Brown, who Francis Brown actually came from Arapahoe in Wyoming. That's his origin, right? But he did a lot of work in Taos. Same thing with Arizona. A couple of other guys that were the quote unquote the top guys in the Coalition for the Wheel came from Arizona. You know, a lot of them went to college there, and a lot of them went on for careers. Some of them anthropology, archaeology, and so on. So I'm sure that Forrest Fenn associated with these people in Santa Fe. I mean, he probably knows Francis Brown or Francis Brown at the time. Francis Brown, of course, is dead now, but I'm sure he knows all of those guys. So there's a big association down there. This is kind of a little bit off topic, but I kind of want to throw it in there because I think that some people will find it interesting. I know K-Pro will find this interesting. And I discussed it before, but you probably didn't see it. This is the wheel, of course, up here, and this is Five Springs Campground. Okay, down here is where I believe the chest was. And here's the waterfalls. This green boundary here is the boundary. This inside here is all national forest, Bighorn. Right out here is all BLM land. Okay, so right where the waterfalls is the cutoff. This is the border. When you're over here, you're on the national forest. Okay, when you're over here, you're BLM. Both of these are, of course, this area is all managed by the Department of the Interior, but it's unstaffed. They don't staff BLM area. There's nobody here to collect tickets and charge you, and you know, there's no ranger station here, nothing, because those BLM areas don't have the infrastructure to handle tourists like a national park does. A national park like Yellowstone could handle millions of tourists a year. This area can't handle more because it's just a tiny campground, right? Uh, but anyway, look at the outline of this. Just use your imagination. Look at the outline of this. When I seen that, holy cow, it immediately reminded me of the frog that's in the Thrill of the Chase. So here is that big boy. And of course, this is a different image. I can't find the image where I did it on that map that I just showed you, but he fits in there perfect. It matches the terrain almost to a T up here. This whole thing almost manages it to a T. Okay. The only place that's a little shaky is down around here. But this whole part from here all the way around, you know, try it yourself. Go take the frog, cut it out, and paste it in there. And you can see that it's just funny. I mean, obviously, I didn't base my solve around this. This is something that I found out after we were done with the solution, because after you're done with a solution, it's kind of the fun time. That's when you step back and you're like, okay, now that we're done with it and it worked with the poem, let's go through the book and let's find external things that would refer back and maybe help support our solve. You know? Okay, so now before I go into some of the stuff related to the solve, all of this part of the video, I'm going to try to maintain focused on only 2 things: the poem and what's available on site. Okay, I don't want to deviate there. I'm not going to try to mention any hints because the solution works without any hints, anything other than information in the poem and what's on site. Okay, there's no external information. In a couple of minutes from now, I'm going to be talking about stuff that has nothing to do with the poem. It's just outside information, but I just want to make it perfectly clear. perfectly clear to those of you that want to run this on 2x speed or whatever, that none of the stuff that I'm going to show you later is required for the solution, okay? Including what I'm about to show you now, sort of, right? But all this stuff is really explained on site through the names and the meanings behind of where everything is. So the stars, like I said, here's Falmahat. This is the decairn. This is what you would see if you were sitting at the wheel, and it was 28 days before solstice. And at the time, I don't know what time of day, I'd have to look at the celestial maps, but this would rise. And what that means, it'll blink like right when the sun comes up, that instant during the first few 10, 15, 20 seconds while the sun is rising. When the sun gets up high enough that it's going to overtake the atmosphere, and that's when you no longer see the stars that are out at night, right? So for a very instant, it'll highlight the star, right? 28 days before. And if we were sitting at the wheel and the decairn was here, okay, because this is looking south, this is roughly the horizon. This is where Falmahat would be. And if you look right above Falmahat at the same time, we have Aquarius. Okay. All of this is in the section of the sky known as the celestial sea. That's why everything in this area has some kind of a water theme for the most part, right? Falmahat is also known as the loneliest star because it's the brightest star kind of on its own. Now, when you're navigating in the southern hemisphere, they would use Falmahat just like we would use Polaris up in the northern hemisphere to navigate because they expect it to be at certain places, certain times, and it's in a very dark area of the sky, so it's very easy to see it because it's isolated, right? But as you can see, when the Indians would look at stuff like this from the wheel, they would have stories like, and they treated this as if Aquarius is spilling water into the mouth of the fish, which is Falmahat, okay? And Falmahat is sucking up all the water to save the world. Anyway, there's actually an unnamed celestial body that's made up of a chain of stars that's called the river, and it's the river that goes from Aquarius to Falmahat. All this stuff is it sounds like it's out there, but if you look on site, right, and then you go and Google, you'll quickly find out that Google is going to easily explain you what Falmahat means. Now, remember, now that you're at the right place where warm waters halt, you're using information available on site. And Falmahat and Rigel and Orion and Taurus the Bull and the Sun are obviously the most 5 important things, right? And they all are associated with the clues in Forrest Fenn's poem. That's the mapping. And that's kind of what took us a while to realize, right? So anyway, this, of course, is the Milky Way. Here's Falmahat, okay, rising. This is the Milky Way. This is the Milky Way here. This is that time of day. What I did is you could use a program like this, the Stellarium. I actually downloaded it and run the Windows version. But it's really cool, really cool. They do have an online version too, but I don't use it. I prefer the local version, but it's cool because what you could do is you could put in the GPS coordinates of anywhere around the world, right? Even your house, right? And you put in the coordinates and it places you there. And it gives you a 3D view of the sky, including the horizon and everything. Now, the horizon is just like a fake image that they map on there. It's like not going to show your neighbor's house and stuff like that. It's just a basic horizon, but the sky will be accurate. And you can test this. Go out at night if you live in an area that you can actually see the stars. And I can see them down here where I live in a certain section of Florida. It's really easy to pick them up. In Wyoming, oh my God, you can see everything. But anyway, it's cool. Go up, find a star, find a bright one, fire up this program, put yourself at that position where your house is, and then adjust the time for today's date and current time, and you'll see exactly what body that is. And the cool thing about that is you can set any time. So what I did is I put myself at the wheel, sitting in that cairn where the Indians would sit, and then I just set the time to dates of when the solstice would happen, when the sunrise happens, and you could see it. It's so cool that you could actually see the stars coming up, and you can see exactly what the wheel represents. Anyway, check it out. Check it out. It's a very cool program, the Stellaris. And now I'm going to show you this here on Google for now, but this, of course, will be true even on Bing or any search engine that you use. So, as you know, my solution, of course, is all based around try the wheel, which is the secret message that he has in the poem if you follow the poem precisely. So somebody might say, well, what wheel? What wheel? Well, for those of you that don't really know the wheel, that is considered Stonehenge of the United States. I mean, this thing goes back 12,000 years. I mean, we're talking about the Paleo Indians, the Stone Age, this goes way back. This is not something that's recent. And it's been studied by a lot of people. And like I said, it represents all 81 Plains Indian tribes. So this is not just an area. This is their. So I'll type in Wyoming wheel. Okay. I'll hit search. And would you look at that? The very first thing, why medicine wheel? I mean, this, this is what you're going to see. Okay. Medicine wheel, historic landmark, blah, 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 blah. This is the wheel. There's no other wheel. If you're not going to use this wheel, then you're inserting personal bias. I know there's a lot of wheels and medicine wheels all over Wyoming, but this is the one. So we type in Wyoming wheel here at Microsoft Bing. Look at that. Look at that. First thing, state history, Lower Wyoming, Indian mountain wheel, medicine wheel. So, I mean, there's no, if you're confused about which wheel would I try and you want to insert bias, that would be kind of silly considering how easy it was to find it here. Now, one more thing, just to get it out of the way before I go on. Everybody might say, well, why are you considering Five Springs warm water? And I'm not the only one that found this document. There's somebody else named Suzanne Stanners. That's a fake name. But if you see them on Reddit or on Facebook, they also point this out, this document. And here you can see it's classified as warm. Okay, so I know Toby likes these kind of documents. Okay. Yeah, they're considered warm waters. There's several springs, Five Springs. Okay, and Five Springs Creek. You can read it right here. Okay, so in the email that I sent to Forrest Fenn back in May of 2020, where I mentioned Five Springs, but I said that we're not going to go there. And as I said in one of my other videos, this is where we were gonna go. And I showed Forrest Fenn these places. Okay, these are the first ones that were close to the wheel. Let me explain something first and show you something. If I go to the wheel area and I go, let's go to about this height, right? Let's rotate the map approximately like this. And then let's go down just to give you an idea of the terrain. So the medicine wheel's up here, and you can see the land slopes down, right? And then there's this green line here. Well, that green line is a cattle fence, okay? And the cattle fence is there to stop the cattle from going into the wheel area, basically, because a lot of cattle would come up here to graze. Okay, that's how things happen in Wyoming with roaming cattle. So they'll come up here to graze. And incidentally, this whole area over here is also, you're not allowed to camp or go around here. You can walk around here, but you can't camp overnight. It's restricted because it's part of the protected area, obviously. And the same thing holds true up here because this area up here, if you'll notice, there's a lot of ancient TP rings and stuff like that. They go way back. This is where they come to do ceremonies before they go to the wheel, okay? Or one of the places. The other places was down in the basin here and down by Five Springs. But if you look at that, like I said, this goes down in elevation. If somebody was standing at the wheel, they wouldn't even see this fence. That's how much of a slope there is. So I wanted to get that out of the way so that you'll kind of know what's going on here. So in this picture, here's that fence again, okay? And here's what Sam did. Forget about this arrow right now. Sam was looking at the E and D cards, okay? And he was saying the end is drawing nigh, E and D. So what he thought was that it would go this way, okay? And he was over here. Now, this is 292 degrees. I'm not going to get into exactly how he figured this out The problem was that he was using external information. Again, like I said, where a lot of people would look at a map and they would look and see Devil's Canyon and all that. That's why he ended up at Porcupine Falls, or you'll end up at Bucking Mule. Everybody looks at Devil's Canyon and they're associating that with No Place for the Meek. That's not what you're supposed to do. And Sam and I both didn't realize it yet. So Sam is looking here, right? That's his first spot. And then I told Sam, I said, well, why are you there? Just to make sure to rule it out. Why not check these other spots too? Because my partner's already going to be there. He's going to park outside here and walk down to here. So, if you zoomed in Google Earth, you'll see that there's rocks over here. And like I said, you could be standing here and you won't see the fence even. So most people that visit the wheel would never consider going here. Now there's also an ice cave over here. There's plenty of things going on. Most people are going to go to the wheel and they're going to go around here. Now, some of them are going to know about this and they're probably going to walk over there. But they're still not going to. Who's going to climb the fence and go way down here? That was the way Sam was looking at it. So when we told Forrest Fenn we were going to go here first, that's what I mean when I say that. Because I didn't have the Five Springs solve done yet. And I told Forrest that. So I said, here's where we're going to go, right? And then one thing I did tell Forrest is I figured, let me at least look at Sam's solve. And I said, let me see what I could do with it here, right? Well, like I said, this is A, B, C, D, E, right? So I said, what if when he means the end is ever drawn? Now you're going to actually go from the E to the D. ED, like flip this. So I drew a line coming from E through D and just let it go on, right? Now this, if you divide the circle in half, okay, this is north up here. But if you come in this way and you got to walk left, right? But if you divide it in half, we got Aldebaran, which is Taurus the Bull, the brightest star in Taurus, and he's fighting Orion the Hunter, and this is Orion Hunter's toe. And down here is Orion's hunting dog. One of the stars in there is Sirius. We got Orion fighting Taurus the Bull, and all of this stuff, like I said, is easy to find out when you're on site. If you look at the names of these places and go and research mythology of. Now, remember, we're at an Indian place. You got to put everything into, think like an Indian. What kind of stories would they have in their head about these stars? So, you got, like I said, Orion's fighting Taurus the Bull. They're battling to the death. You could consider this whole half of the wheel, No Place for the Meek, the stars that it's referring to, right? And then when he's saying there's no paddle up your creek, well, that's the dog star. So that would be doggy paddle, right? Just heavy loads and water high. Well, the D kind of represents water high. I just showed you that. That's Fama. So anyway, that's how this came about. And we sent that to Forrest in May. And we told them that we're going to go here June 6th to these spots. So when Forrest Fenn seen this, if my solve is right, he knew that we weren't going to find it right then and there, right? Because it was wrong. And this was just kind of a funny thing I did to Forrest. This is a bathroom, right? So, it's No Place for the Meek. And this ever drawing night. I would joke around like that frequently, right? And I said that there's out maps of the Carns. It was kind of a joke with, but anyway, that's that, right? So we were like everywhere but where we were supposed to be. You got to focus on the wheel. So I'm thinking to myself, if we're going to focus on the wheel, let me step back a bit. This is part of what I was doing during the winter from January 2020 until April or May 2020 while I was working up to solve. This is how I discovered Five Springs and everything, but I didn't totally finish it yet, right? And I'll get to that in a minute. That's one of the reasons why we delayed it. So I said, let's get those spots that I just showed you out of the way. And then the second time our partner goes back later in June, we'll cover the snooze spots because that should be done by then, right? So if you're going to try the wheel, now think about that. Try the wheel. And I don't understand why I didn't get this from the beginning. When you try something, okay, if I told you to try driving a car, you're going to go in the car, you're going to start the car, you're going to put it in drive, right? And then you're going to drive. You're not going to go and stand on the roof and run around and kick the tires and jump up and down on the hood. That's not how you use a car. You use a car to drive somewhere, right? So you're going to go and drive. So how would they use the wheel? Well, it's all described on site, right? They're telling you that the Indians use it to watch the stars during the solstice. Okay. So everything is on there. Why don't we do exactly like an Indian would do? Let's actually try the wheel, right? We'll use the wheel and use the poem to match up with the wheel. Okay. So there's a problem with that though. And one of the things you're going to find out when you look at the wheel, if you dig deep enough about the wheel, is Dr. Eady he's generally, and this is what I ended up going with, Dr. Eady. Because Dr. John Eady is the one that it's really documented on site. They show his map. Okay. They describe everything the way he described it. But the problem is, just like in any science, the archaeologists or anthropologists don't all agree on what Dr. John Eady said. Now, keep in mind, Dr. Eady is a solar physicist and an astronomer, so he's not just a flunky, right? But there's people that would challenge him, right? And here's one example. This guy's name is J. Ellis Ransom. He was born in the early 1900s, okay? Up in 1924, he did this, what we're looking at here, and he's got a book. I purchased his book, so I have all this information, this entire book. You can find it on Amazon. It's cheap. It's like $6-7. I don't remember. It wasn't that much. So I bought his book, and then you check it out. Here's a map from in the book, right? Now, he completely disagrees. Now, he's an amateur anthropologist, but he worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, okay, up in Alaska. And so he's got a history of being involved in a lot of study of Indians. And he believes that this really has nothing to do with the Indians. This was more used by ancient Stone Age people. He was saying it's more like an Aztec calendar, like a tablet, a calendar, and this would get to hints, and people are probably starting to pop in their head the hints in the book. But anyway, he considered it more like a tablet. Now, he drew this map, and it's really interesting because, of course, this dotted line is the sun setting. And you don't need to be a rocket scientist to use the map I just showed you and draw a line on the topographical map in the direction that the sun goes, right? But anyway, he drew that, okay? And then he drew, this is the mouth of the canyon. This is that road that I was talking about that's decommissioned now. And of course, the campground and stuff would be down here. But this, back in the day, was also considered part of the campground. This, of course, now you're inside the national forest. You're not on the BLM land. But you remember that Forrest Fenn said you can't walk to where he wants you to go from the wheel. And what he meant was that if you follow this creek down, okay, from where warm water salt and you followed it down, you're going to reach a point that you can no longer go. And that point is the waterfall. So he instead took you all the way around and sent you up into the canyon from the base, okay, in the poem, if you read the poem. But anyway, J. Ransom Ellis believes that this is a gateway to basically when you die. Okay, they believe the spirits follow this dotted line towards the sun, and then they enter through the center of the wheel. Okay, and they go basically into the afterlife from that point. So he believes that all the wheels lead to this wheel. Were supposed to be like spiritual guides for the natives. That when they died, they would be able to find the wheels, and they all lead to this wheel. And they could follow it right up from that point and jump into the center of the wheel and enter the afterlife. Now, the stuff that I'm telling you here is not explained at the wheel because this guy, well, number one, he was, he was an amateur, kind of like Forrest. They ended up taking, Dr. John Eady over all of this, and that's what we have on site. So you can't really use this information. But I thought it was interesting because this dotted line. Now, remember, this is Rainbow Canyon. So imagine a bunch of spirits following this line and jumping into the oak, the center of the wheel, to go into the afterlife. Now, the trail he's talking about walking goes up here. And if you look on Google Earth, you can kind of see remnants of it. It's almost impossible to do this climb now. It's just from erosion since the 1920s. it became harder and harder. You're not going to climb this way, but you could see the trailhead over here, and you could see where they would go along this road, right past the canyon mouth. Okay, the sun comes down along this line, and it intersects the trail up here, and then it enters the canyon. Okay, um, but he believes that the Indians, when they would walk up there, they would walk this way, and they would go up to the top, and then they would come and approach the wheel from this direction. Now, the Indians don't agree with that because when the Indians approach the wheel, they believe that if you come into the wheel from any area other than from the north and the east, you're upsetting the gods and spirits. That's why they have the walk left up here. So when they come in, they would come in this way, and they would always approach the wheel from the east. All right. So it's just interesting stuff that this guy, like I said, you can look him up, J. Ellis Ransom. I explained this before, but this is what J. Ellis Ransom is talking about. If you look at this map of the Earth right after the Ice Age, this is roughly, let's say, 12,000 years ago. Okay, this is the Bering Strait. Okay, so this is the over towards Russia over here, right? Well, this water, it didn't freeze. What happens is the water level dropped because of the glaciers, and you were able to walk across the from Siberia over into current day Canada and Alaska. All right. Now, what happened is when the Paleo Indians came here, they came across this way, and they were only able to go up to around here because this was still all frozen. When people first migrated to the United States, they believed that they came along the coast, okay? Because, like I said, the land, if you look at it now, because the water filled it all back in when the glaciers receded, this land was capable of being walked on all the way down California and everything, right in, right in. And then, of course, they can go right over here through Central America and down, and that's how South America got populated, right? That's why when they had Forrest Fenn discovered those Clovis points to be fake, the guy claimed they came from South America. Well, there is no Clovis where the guy claimed they came from because all the mammoths and the Stone Age people came in this way. So when the glaciers receded, it opened up a pathway. Okay, and this is the way people migrated. So if they didn't come along the coast, they came down here following the mammoths. Okay, and then this is the way they populated from here down. Okay, so 12,000 years ago is when J. Ellis Ransom believes that they created the wheel, and he believes that they created the wheel for not for the native Indians. It goes back further than them. So I'm looking at this stuff over the winter. I'm like, okay, we got to try the wheel. We're going to look at Eddie's diagram because forget about J. Ellis Ransom and forget about the ancient 12,000-year-old stuff now, and let's just focus on this because this is what's documented on site. I don't want to deviate and start using external references because that's how you get into rabbit holes, and that's the mistake that I made all along. I'm looking at this and I'm like, what does he mean by try the wheel? Okay, and like I said, try the wheel means actually use it like the natives would. So I'm like, forget about what we were connecting E to D and going this way and connecting D to E and going up that way. I'm like, that's not the way the natives would use it. Okay. So if the natives are observing Aldebaran or Rigel or Sirius or Fomalhaut, what they do is they would sit right here. Okay. So they're sitting in the backstop, and then they would look in the direction that's described on site. So that's how they're looking. So I'm like, when we enter the wheel, we got to walk clockwise, right? So if you read them off the way Forrest Fenn is saying them, right? No place for the meek, the end is ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up your creek, right? The dog star. So like I said, you got Taurus and Orion are fighting, okay? And then you got the dog star, and then you got Farmer Hot. So no place for the meek, the end's ever drawing nigh. There'll be no paddle up the creek, just heavy loads and water high. Okay. So I'm like, where do they sit when they're looking there? They would sit here when they're looking. Now I already knew that Farmer Hot is water, right? I just told you that. And that's the whole water theme part of the sky goes from this section into that quadrant. It's well known, well documented on site, and easily discovered. Just look at in the sky. I mean, just look at the names right here on the map, and you'll know the references, right? So that means that this is pointing to where warm water salt. I mean, it seems obvious to me, right? Just keep it simple, stupid, right? And this is what I thought to myself, and I'm like, okay, so that's it. Let's go in that direction, okay? And that's where warm water salt. Now, obviously, right down, the very first thing you find is Five Springs Basin. It's plural, and I'm like, that's where warm water salt. Remember, use your imagination, right? So where do warm waters halt? They halt in the upper atmosphere. They halt in the sky. They form clouds, which rains back down to us, right? And then look at it from a point of view of a celestial object. Well, we have Aquarius spilling water into the fish's mouth. So warm waters halt at the fish's mouth. I mean, Forrest Fenn said, use your imagination. So we use our imagination. We were told to try the wheel. Now we're at the wheel. So we're still going to use our imagination right now at this point to try to locate the physical spots. And we're going to do that by pairing the clues in the poem up with what we see on site. Really, really straightforward, right? So let's continue that theme. Okay, so the end is ever drawing nigh. Well, we got the end of the day. We got the sunrise, and then we got the sunset. If you want to see the sunrise, you stand here and you look in that direction, right? Clear. It's right on the map here. There's no guessing or nothing like that. And if you want to see the sunset, you would stand here. Okay? So the days are never ending. And same thing with a circle. The circle never ends. The end is ever drawing nigh. Same reason why Forrest Fenn is standing next to a wagon wheel. The end, the END, is ever drawing nigh. So I'm like, okay, so we're here. We found where warm water salt. So then I'm around here. I said, okay, so now we're going from A, B, C, D, E, to N. E and D is ever drawing nigh. We're standing at the E. We're looking at the sunrise. Okay. Now, this is what the part that I didn't realize until later. He is saying, look quickly down. Okay, when you found the blaze here. Well, he's saying quickly because the sun's in the sky, number one, right? It moves. I mean, the sun doesn't just sit there on one spot; it moves. So if you're not watching it at the right time, now again, keep in mind this is in your imagination. I'm not saying you need to be there on summer solstice because you have a map here. You know what's going to happen. Just use your imagination. Oh, okay, the sun's going to rise over there. Now, if you stood here, no, you're not going to see the sunrise unless you're there at the right time and the right day. But you don't have to do that. But pretend you're in Indiana Jones if you want to, think like in your imagination with Forrest, And it hit me, and I'm like, wait, look quickly down, okay? If somebody had, let me expand this a little bit. If somebody had a flashlight, right, and you're holding that flashlight, okay, and the flashlight's creating a beam, right? If I told you to look quickly down, you're looking down the beam. You're looking down the beam, obvious, right? So I'm like, wait a minute. He's telling you to put your back to the sun and look away from it. Look quickly down. Your quest to cease. So I went back to the map, and that's what I did. So I'm looking down to where warm water salt, and then I'm looking away from the sun. I'm looking quickly down. And that was when I discovered that this line is going to take me right to where I need to put in. Like you can see here, it's going right down the sunlight. Now remember, like I said, I drew this from the map that was on site. I didn't guess it. I don't need to be there on a certain day. This is the direction that the sun's going to go. And it happens to go right over the waterfalls, okay? Right into the canyon at the mouth, right over the waterfalls, right down, right over the place that you turn off to go to the campground. That's your put in, right? And then right down into Rainbow Canyon. And I'm like, holy crap. And I showed this to Sam, and I'm like, why did we not see this? But I don't feel too bad because nobody's seen this, including the other people that were looking at the wheel on that month, except for Jack, I guess. And I'm like, holy crap. I mean, everything just fits. It's like, where does Warm Water Hall? Five Springs Basin. What is your creek? Five Springs Creek. Which canyon? Five Springs Canyon. everything fits. He doesn't have to say um, like 6 different names. He's got one name. It's Five Springs, right? And then I'm thinking to myself, everything just fit in. I'm like, oh, Tarry Scant on Marble Gaze. That's what you do at a campground. You tarry scant. Now the Marble Gaze, of course, is the falls, the waterfalls. And then I started thinking about the overlook bench and how it relates to the crossroads of culture. France Brown up here, and you're looking down from that bench into the basin. And then I started thinking about not far, but too far to walk. Well, you can't walk this way because you can't follow the creek, because when you arrive here, it goes down a 200-foot waterfall. So what he's doing is he's telling you to come in from below. And I'm like, that's it. I mean, and everything fits without bending and distorting the poem and using all kinds of crazy things outside. It just works. And Sam Smith like practically fell off his chair. He knew right then and there. He goes, "You got it." And I told him, I said, yeah. And the main thing, like I said, that made me get it. I was working on it, okay, but I didn't know. I didn't know initially like that it was down here. I was looking up around here and stuff like that. But then it finally hit me that it's sitting across with the culture. And what did that to me was the person that called me and did the PayPal donation. When he gave me the hint and he told me to look at the bench, I looked at the screenshot and I'm looking at it. I already knew Francis Brown and everything was on there. And Mahoma Brown is essentially everything in the protected area. So I knew all of that already. But as soon as he said the look down, I'm like, that's it. And I said, damn it, we blew it. We didn't send our partner there. And I'm like, holy crap, man. He said, look at it. And I knew. I said, that's it. It's got to be it. Right then, everything just fell into place. I'm like, the sun is pointing down to where you come in. And I'm not really talking about hints in the book here, but if you read the story about him looking for Lewis and Clark, they were up in an area like this, okay? They couldn't find any food and water, right? So they wanted to get out of here. So Forrest Fenn used mountain man wisdom, okay? He looked to the east to find the sun rising. Then he found out where east was. Like I said, once he knew that, he looked to the south and he found the biggest mountain he's seen, okay? So what they did is they found the nearest fast running creek or stream. They went down it, okay? And then they reached a point that they could no longer go further anymore. We could see our destination. Now, remember, like I said, the treasure chest is here, and you're standing like 200 feet higher or 300 feet higher than the treasure chest, and you're up high at a high elevation, and you can see where you're going, but you can't get there. So they had to double back all the way back up the creek, find a Forest Service road, follow the Forest Service road out, and then they were back where they started down here. And they can go home from that way. And I'm like, this is it. And Sam Smith agreed with me. I'm like, oh my God. Think about Indiana Jones, okay? If you're down here, remember there's a canyon in here and there's a tight wall. And I'll show you that later in the drone footage. So when the sunlight is shining down through that canyon, it's literally going to light up where the treasure chest is. And everything around it's going to be completely dark if you catch it at the right time. Again, you got to use this as your imagination. You know the sun is going to light everything up in this way, and you know where the shadows are going to be. So the only thing that will be lit up is the area where the chest is. If you ignore the look quickly down part, and you weren't there at the or figuring this out at the right point in time, then you wouldn't notice that, right? Because the light, what's going to happen is the sun is going to come up over here, right? And then it's going to go around during the day. So its beam is constantly switching. It's going to be going that way, that way, that way, that way, that way. And then eventually it's going to set with the sun pointing this way. So this way it's going to be lighting up. And because of that really tight canyon, it's literally going to light up campsite number 9 and the treasure chest. It's going to go right over the water at that point. There's no doubt about it, right? So I'm like, oh my God. I've got another example of that. This is what it would look like. Well, this is not down in the canyon. This is actually above the basin. It's really hard to go down in low in Google Earth because the camera just freaks out. But if you were standing at the same elevation of the wheel and you put yourself to the west, looking east, and you were standing at the e-cairn looking over the O, this is what it would look like when on the day of the solstice, when the sun rose, would come up right over here. So now if you follow the sunlight, if the sun was a flashlight and you were standing on the other side of it and looking quickly down, it would shine right to the damn treasure chest and right to where you're supposed to put in. I'm like, I can't believe we missed it, but that's what I mean. And our problem was that we solved the poem, right, using all the right logic. And then when we found out try to wheel, we ignored the try to wheel part. We went to the map again, and we're standing at the wheel and we're looking for Devil's Playground and Devil's Canyon and Porcupine Creek, and we're just so now that we got one more salt, we were looking on the map for all the other clues, and it's wrong because we didn't do what he said and try the wheel, use the wheel as it's supposed to be used. Once we did that and we understood that, everything just clicked. And I was like, I noticed it. There's no way that, I mean, the thing is proving itself to me. But it was really earth shattering. I think, unfortunately, this all that I'm telling you right now occurred June 8th, right? So 2 days after it was announced found. So we were already too late. My partner was already boots on the ground. This part that I'm telling you right now wasn't found out until June 8th. And then of course, I did on June 16th or whatever, I did a video about it. And then on June 20th, I did a live stream and I showed the detail of how all of this worked. So, and at the time, we didn't even know it was found in Wyoming yet. Okay, so now back to the other stuff that I was just talking about before, kind of the timeline of what was going on here. So we know Forrest Fenn was at the Rendezvous Royale in September 22nd. We know that for sure. We got video of him and Peggy being there. And I'm going to assume for now that that's when he hit the chest because of the fact that he said that in one of the legal documents said he hit it in 2010. He basically says that's when he hit it. Gives us the actual year. 1 month after he was at Cody, the next thing that happens is on October 23rd in 2010, The Thrill of the Chase is officially released. So October 23rd, 2010 is when the chase, quote unquote, kicked off. That shows that Forrest Fenn was there. That gives us a likely timeline, and that's what happened. So now that we're beyond that, the chest has been found. I came out with my sob. I did the video. I did the live stream. I showed all of that. Forrest Fenn announced that it was found in the state of Wyoming, and so on and so forth. Now, from that point on, from like late 2020 to let's say to current time, right? A chain of other events happened that were kind of cool and kind of, based on the fact that people seen my video, they started coming out and they were telling me, hey, I was one of the people that was looking for the chest at the same time. And here's what I thought, and so on and so forth. So now I had other people's perspective. So one of the things that I found during that time, and there's no specific order to what I'm about to tell you. It's just generally, I'm trying to remember if it happened in this order. I don't know. But some point, somebody told me, they sent me a slew of emails, okay? The person's name was, I'm just going to say Faye. And I know it's a fake name. They told me it was a fake name. I did a video about it. And this is that video, okay? TTOC anonymous wheel sob ending with destroyed blaze. But basically, I think it was in 2019, they contacted me just briefly and they told me that they were going back. And 2021, they give me more information and so on and so forth. You can watch this video to find out more information. But that person pointed out something interesting to me, and I believe that they were trying to sidetrack me or get me off my sob. I don't know that. Part of the problem with interpreting emails like this is, first of all, the person that sent it to me was anonymous, right? That's problem number one. The second problem is I don't know what their motive is for mailing me. What are they trying to help me? You could try to determine it by reading this. But like most people in the chase, this person was kind of speaking in code, like he wouldn't come out and say things. And it really was confusing, right? And it caused me to make a video that I pointed out to you guys that I made a mistake. Because initially, when he told me about the fake blaze, I thought that it was this. Okay, this is Porcupine Falls trailhead, and this leads you down to Porcupine Falls. This is Porcupine Falls over here. And he told me that he was over here. And he said that when if you use the falls as a blaze, basically, and you look right above the falls and look straight back, it goes directly to the wheel. Okay. So he believed that the solve was here. This is the confusing part, I think. I still don't totally understand them, but this is where they ended up. This is where he believes that it was, somewhere over here. Okay. But it was very confusing because he talked about this area with a big slab and then a hole in it, right? And it was destroyed when he went back. In other words, let's say in 2017 it was there, and then in 2018 it was destroyed. So I thought he was talking about this area, and then eventually, after like a bunch of emails and really a lot of confusion, mainly because it seemed like this guy was trying to be secretive. He didn't want to come out and tell me in English what it was, where specifically. And he wasn't really showing me pictures. So I made this picture. He didn't show me anything. Like I had to figure out. He gave me the coordinates, and I plotted it, and this is where he was, right here. He said instead of going down the trail this way, that there's an exit that takes you off the trail, and then and it takes you down here, and then you go around the cliff, and you're right across from the falls. And okay, and I thought that's where you had the broken blades, but that wasn't it. Now let me show you one thing first. What I imagined is something similar to this, like he's looking through a hole. Now this image here is actually from the wheel, but this is way far away. This is where the solstice sun would come up if you're looking east. Okay, this is I guess an archaeologist. They were out there doing some work and checking the star alignments and all of that stuff, right? And there's a hole over here, and he's on the east side, and he's looking west, right? So he's looking directly back at the wheel, and he's looking at the O and the E current. So the sun, when it rose, would essentially come up through this circle, okay? And he was showing that, right? Now remember, this doesn't have anything to do with the sob. I'm just giving you an idea. But anyway, this is kind of what I imagined, something similar to that. And basically, the guy told me that you could tell it was done with dynamite or something. Somebody physically destroyed it, the blaze, because I guess maybe he was the one who destroyed it. I don't know. Or maybe he was trying to get me away from Five Strings Campground. I don't know. I don't know the motive of why somebody would do that. If you want to come out with a sob, then come out with a sob. Don't do it through me by you being talking in code and secret, because I'm not going to waste my time to interpret what somebody's trying to say. I tried to just to give you guys enough information. And since he was anonymous and wouldn't give me his real name and was clearly using a fake email address, I'm not going to go and do a story about this person because I can't really, there's nobody behind it. It's not a credible source. In other words, I don't know who they are. But I still wanted to relay the information with you knowing that. So I was thinking something like this was over at that spot. But what I learned was that I was wrong. Now, let me show you one more picture of what you would see if you were standing at the spot that he told me over by Porcupine. It's his picture that he sent me, right? So this is standing on the ledge he's talking about, and you're looking back. And I guess because it's hazy out, you can't see it. But the medicine wheel would be back in that direction over here. Okay. This is kind of what he was talking about. If he aimed his camera straight down where his feet are, that's where he actually believed the treasure chest was. But it's filled in with rocks, and it's almost impossible to get under through all the rocks. They tried and they couldn't, but he believes the chest was under those rocks. I don't believe it because I can't get the solve to work from here. And like I said, Sam Smith was all over here. He was all over here. He was on both sides. Him and his wife were all around here. They were even down here by the falls. And I looked at his sob and looked at his pictures and looked at everything that Sam had, and I just can't get it to work. This person couldn't get it to work over at Five Springs, and I'll show you where he was. This is ultimately where the blaze was broken. Okay, here's Five Springs, and if you look, this is called the lower campground. Okay, if you were down here where you put in and you follow the sign to Five Springs Campground, the first place where you would turn off because of heavy loads and water high would be at the waterfall. That's where our solve is, okay? So you would turn off in this direction, pretty clear. But if you didn't turn off and you kept going, it brings you to what they call the upper campground, okay? And if you look in here, you could see it. There's a bathroom over here, and then there's all these places where you could put campers and camp up here. You could look at drone footage I have because Justin went over here and he parked over here and he shot drone footage over here, and then he also parked down here, and that's when he did his drone footage all up in here. But anyway, this guy for some reason was over here. Now, like I said, I don't know his solve. I don't know why he ended up there, but he was here. Now, I don't think this person was Jack, but he might be somebody from Reddit, maybe somebody that knew Jack or seen something or whatever. But in 2018, when this guy went there, he went over here, okay, and there's a bench down here at the overlook, okay. And what he did is he went up. There's an old trail. It's a pretty hard trail. He told me it's actually pretty difficult to get up there. But when you go up here, there was a large rock with a hole. And if I'm getting this right, if you look through that hole, you would see the wheel. Okay. And I think he meant something about a ledge up here with a tree or something like that. And he thought the treasure chest was up there, right? Now, I don't know if somebody actually had the guts to go up there and look. Maybe this guy did. I don't know. Like I said, he was being secretive, right? And I guess they just got disgruntled. And in 2018, early, they just destroyed this rock. So it's gone. So the broken blaze is over here. So if that was Jack and Jack seen this broken blaze, he would have abandoned his Five Springs thing. And that's when he went over to Yellowstone. And then what I believe happened is he realized that he was wrong, that it was in here. And for some reason, and I don't know why, everybody seems to avoid this area. It's like the plague. I don't know. But anyway, and he went back from Yellowstone, and then Jack came here, spent the 25 days going back, and he found it here. Because he kind of says that the blaze was broke. He tried to contact Forrest, let him know, and then he went off somewhere, and then he comes back, and then, he figured out, well, he was wrong, I guess, that the blaze is not. I know it. This okay, when you look at the wheel, okay, when he says use the wheel, now remember, I'm saying do everything the poem is telling you to do. There is no vector or radial from that wheel that would make any sense that would send you out here. So I'm guessing that person was using personal bias. Now, if you're heading to heavy loads and water high over here, there's nothing over here that would resemble heavy loads and water high. Now, he was trying to claim that you're looking back up here and the heavy loads and water high would be up here. So he was kind of flipping what I have. And he's saying, so instead of going, and that's what ended up sending him all the way over to Porcupine, which is that's Bucking Mule over here. And by the way, that hole I just showed you, that's over here. The guy that was looking through the hole, that was here. Okay. By the way, I don't know if you can hear Stewie talking in the background. Stewie's usually quiet. But anyway, that's where the broken blaze was, over here, I believe, that Jack was talking about. Either way, it's clear that some searcher was stuck and they couldn't find anything, and they busted the blaze thinking that they were going to hurt other searchers. But their solve was clearly wrong, in my opinion. Now, like I said, if that guy watches this video, Faye or whatever, there's really no point in emailing me. But what I suggest that you do is make your own video or write up your solve and put it out there. I mean, the chase is over, because I don't have time to try to decode somebody's emails so that they don't want to mention. And by the way, let me set this back north. That's north, just to give you an idea. So this guy was way out here in the west, and I'm in here where the water is. But I don't know. But I don't have no time to decode things. People want to be secretive. I don't know why. Well, anyway, let's move on. And this is going to get into the point where I met Justin and Michelle. I'm going to lead up to it. Again, here's a shot of Justin trying to go into the nook area that's over here underneath the tree, the fallen omega tree. This is right across. Here's Five Springs Creek right behind him. These are all dogwood. Right to our left here is an aspen tree. Okay, a lot of leaves you see down here are aspen leaves. And anyway, now there's another picture, I guess just when he approached it. He's kneeling down, and he's kneeling down looking into this way, right? So that'll kind of give you some idea. So this is kind of what it looks like if you were standing there and looking down. He's I guess slightly south of the creek, maybe 1 or 2 steps south. And this is the nook in here underneath this tree. I started doing a little bit more research, and somebody sent me some pictures, and it wasn't Justin and Michelle. They sent me some pictures after they seen these videos. Okay. Some of the videos that I've done up to this point, and I mentioned Five Springs. And there's a guy out on YouTube named David Zarate. Hope I didn't butcher that name. But in July of 2020, he did a drone shot flying in. And you can watch my video here and see it because this guy gave me permission to use it. It's really cool. It's kind of like Justin's, except he flies in. Now, this is what I'm talking about. Here's the falls, and up here is where the sun would be. Now, if you look at here, there's a left edge and there's a right edge of the canyon. And I'm not going to show the whole video here. Where is it? Okay, this is the guy flying in, right? If you look at that video, or roughly 1 hour and 2 minutes in. And you can see the edges of the canyon here. Now, the sun would be coming up over here, right? And the light would shine through these two canyon walls, and it would shine light right down where the treasure chest was. The trail that comes out is over here. Here's a bench at the end of the trail, and campsite number 9 is over here, and then the creek is coming down this way, and this is where the sun would cross over it. Remember, at solstice, if you were down here and you were looking in this direction at solstice sunrise, that line that I drew would be coming right down this way. Okay. Now, originally, I thought that the treasure chest was up in this area. You'll see that when you go through these canyon walls here, it goes into like a cirque or an open area where the large falls is. There's a small fall down here that you can climb up pretty easily. And then inside of there, about another 200 feet in, is where the circle area is in the large 200-foot falls. And so it would be a dead end in there, right? But if you watch this is kind of like Indiana Jones because the sun would shine in down through here. Like I said, the sun comes down. Now, on the opposite side of this, what you would have on the opposite side is over here. The sun will be shining on this wall. So here's the one edge of the canyon. The other edge is over here. Okay, and the creek is going down here. We're looking towards the small falls. We'll drop down here, and this is going out. We're facing west. Okay. Now, if you look in the bottom of the canyon wall in here, where the sun would be shining, there's a little treat or wooded area in here. And in the wall over there, there's nooks that were probably carved out many years ago by the sheep eater Indians that would come down here. And basically, they would seek shelter in little alcoves like that, right? So they're down here. And this person went boots on the ground. And they sent me a short video after they seen my video that I just show in that previous video with that David shot, the drone footage. They sent me close-up footage into here. Okay. And they said, yeah, this is pretty cool. And I was in there and I looked at it. And they didn't really say too much. And I showed that and I put this video together, right? You can go ahead and watch it. It's money shot. Then comes Justin and Michelle. Okay. And in December of 2020, okay, it was actually probably a day before this. So December 28th or 29th in 2020, after they see my videos, they contacted me. Justin and Michelle live in Gillette, okay, and they contacted me and they said, hey, Troy, and I just want to let you know that we also had a solid in Five Springs and we based it around the wheel stuff that we seen. And I want you to take a look at the drone footage that we shot, right? We went up there a few days ago. Just take a look. We shot inside the canyon and they too got a pretty cool video and I have it on my channel. And you can see as the drone flies in, obviously the falls are frozen now because this is winter time. So they sent me the video, and I'm looking at the video, and you see where I have my arrow pointing here in that screenshot? Look down here, there's a cross. Now, they didn't even notice that. And I'm like, so I'm looking at their video, and I'm watching it really slow and paying attention. Now, this is the Five Springs Creek. Comes down over the falls, comes across here, and then it goes over. You can't see it because it's off screen at Little Falls. And you can climb up them little falls, and then there's a little trail that takes you back here. And people actually go ice climbing here. Or you can go back here and take a shower in the waterfalls, you know. But the sun, like I said, comes right down. It shines through this area that we're in, and it points down to campsite number 9. And it all goes right down to the Crossroads of Culture, too, right? So I seen that, and I fell off my chair, and I called him up. And I'm like, Justin, Michelle, I'm like, do you guys see this? And I told them, go to this point in your video. And they went there and looked. They're like, holy crap, no. And I said, look at there's a cross there. I said, what the heck is that? And this group of trees is that same trees that guy sent me the boots on the ground footage from. And you can see these alcoves then. There's an alcove over here. There's one over here. There's one over here. They're all the way around, and even around the back side of this, right? And of course, there's probably some on the other sides of the all over the canyon walls too. But this is kind of like a safe place a safe place for the sheep eaters to go during the winter when they come down, because they're no longer up where the frigid air is up at the wheel. They can come down because this is only about 7,000 feet instead of 10,000 feet. They come down and they're isolated. They can't be attacked because this is a one-way. It's a dead end. They can see who's coming in from this way. They got access to water, and there's you can see deer and animal life up here, right? So they have everything, and they're protected from the wind because they're in a cirque. I mean, it's a perfect area for that, right? But I'm looking at this thing, I'm like, holy crap. 4 days after this video, after I put this video up there, and they actually went boots on the ground and went up here and went to that cross. And in this video, I show you what was there. And I guess I'll get into it now. This is what's there. Okay. A woman's name is Amanda Peterson. And she was 31 years old. And this was interesting because this happened about a few days before Forrest Fenn released The Thrill of the Chase. Basically, on October 17th, 2010, Amanda was over here and she was rock climbing straight above that cross, and she fell to her death. Somebody obviously set up a shrine there, and this has been there since 2010, all this time. When I seen this, okay, I immediately said to Justin and Michelle, I said, thanks, number one. Number two, the chest couldn't have been inside that cirque. It couldn't have been where that group of trees is that I'm showing you. Now, this is before I figured out that this is the original spot in my original video where I thought it was back in June of 2020. And this proved me wrong. Justin and Michelle said, well, the video footage I'm looking at, I'm like, there's no way that it would have been here at this alcove or anywhere up in that circular area, because the rescue crew would have found it, okay? Because it would have been pretty fresh too, because this only happened on October 17th, which is less than a month since Forrest Fenn was rendezvous. So like less than a month after the rendezvous, this woman dies in 2010. This would have been after Forrest hit the chest. So I'm like, that rules out inside the cirque. So I'm like, it's got to be further down the sun, further downstream. And that was when all of the campsite number 9 stuff kicked in. So, I mean, it was really thanks to Justin and Michelle that I seen this, because I was believing it was up here. But once I spotted this cross, I'm like, no, there's no way they would have found it. But now this is roughly, 1,000 feet away and up higher. You have to climb a waterfall to get here. So it's pretty far away from the chest. It's further towards the big falls. So then I'm like, okay, water's high. When he's saying heavy loads and water high, he must mean that you don't go past those heavy loads that are down at campsite number 9. And then when I seen where that sign is that says the trail is unmaintained beyond this point, in other words, no place for me, keep going forward if you want to go to the falls, but the trail is unmaintained and beware of rock slides. So we're headed to water high, which is the falls. And then we got heavy loads, which are right to our right now, the rock slide. So we're standing there, right? The sun is ablaze, and we're at a blaze on the trail. But the next part of the poem says, but tarry scant with marble gaze. To me, that is sending you right into the campsite. Just take the chest and go in peace. So if you made a 90-degree turn and face south from the sign that's on the trailhead that leads to the falls, it would take you directly to that omega tree. And then when you look from that omega tree across the creek, you would see the nook. And like I said, unfortunately, since Jack found it, it's disturbed. So I don't know what would have been there. I would imagine that there was something like the word end, or it said something, or like an omega something that wouldn't attract attention. And nobody goes there to begin with because, like I said, it. Why would somebody go away from the campsite and go into the woods, even to go to the bathroom? Because there's bathrooms on site, but you would have to cut down the embankment, cross the creek, and even if you crossed the creek and stood there next to the nook, you wouldn't see the nook. In during search season, you'd have to go down like on your knees to see into the nook, like kind of like Justin was doing. You wouldn't see it, right? So there's no reason to go that way. So I'm like, that's got to be it. I'm like, it's further down. That fit way better than it did up where this cross was, and that's all because of Justin and Michelle. I mean, that was really cool that they did what they did, and they actually went up here in the wintertime. They scaled those rocks in January and went up over the frozen waterfall. And that's another thing they told me when they looked at it. Okay, again, when they actually went up to this cross, they don't believe that Forrest Fenn would have been able to do that with the chest. I don't know that I agree with that, but it doesn't matter because there's no way that it was up there if this happened, because there's no other spot within that nook that would make sense. Okay, so we have to follow the sun further down, and as soon as they showed me that campsite, now here's the kicker: that campsite number 9, I didn't know that was number 9 until I seen Justin and Michelle's footage. So it was December 2020 when I realized that the sob that I put out in June and July up around this area is wrong, and it's actually down closer, and it's in campsite number 9. But that's when I was hooked on it. I'm like, it's got to be there. It just makes sense. Everything fits, everything works, and now it makes even more sense because it would only literally be like 1,000 feet away from Forrest Fenn's car. And not only that, he would only have to walk up an incline that's only about 20 or 30 feet in grade over the span of 1,000 feet, which is nothing. An old man can easily handle that. Okay. And because of the tree cover and everything up there, if nobody was staying at campsite 8 and 9 and nobody was hiked up to the falls, he'd be relatively pretty clear. He could go in there with the chest and a backpack, walk 1,000 feet, sit in the campsite. Nobody would, and sit at the picnic table and eat a pimento sandwich. Nobody would think otherwise, that anything is out of the ordinary. And I'm like, this is it. And I was sold. But yeah. So this is just kind of a weird event, mystery, because I didn't know what this was. But thanks to Michelle and Justin, I know what it is now. And yeah, it's pretty sad. She was a pretty active person. She actually lived in Colorado, but she grew up in Cody. There's no association with Forrest Fenn. This doesn't have anything to do with the chase at all. It's just something that I found that I thought was interesting, and essentially, like I said, I found it from other searchers, just like I found the Broken Blaze and that other person that led me to the snook, and then Justin and Michelle took me away from the snook because when I looked at their video and I seen the cross, I'm like, there's no way. It's got to be farther down. And like I said, if I would have known that was campsite number 9, I didn't know that it was number 9. I knew it was a campsite there, and I knew the layout of the campsites, and I thought it was up in that area because that's the campsite that's the closest to the waterfalls, right? And then so when Justin and Michelle went back again after the ice was gone, they kind of verified that. They went in camp, and then he told me, yeah, by the way, it's campsite number 9. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't know that it was number 9. And it just blew me away. I mean, the chain of events and, the people that I met and everything. Now, I would have never found that out because since the chase is over, there's no point of me going here, right? So I would have never went there. I would have never sent my partner or anything like that. This is something that they did out of the kindness of their heart because they believe in the solve too, and they were looking here. But they, like Jack, they actually gave up on this at one point, and they went into Yellowstone. And then they realized the error of their ways, and they ended up coming back here, especially after they seen my video. And that's what led up to them doing the drone footage and all of that. So pretty cool stuff that I met all these people as a result of the chase. It's just amazing what occurred over this, And it wouldn't have happened without Forrest Fenn. And the same thing with all this the studying in English that I did. and now all the knowledge I have about Wyoming, it's just amazing what I learned indirectly. Okay, so now just briefly, I'm gonna discuss a couple things about the wheel, and from this point on, I'm not talking about like this is definitely information that you wouldn't need to know for the solve. It's kind of just stuff that I discovered along the way that I thought that was interesting, and I just want to touch on it briefly. Um, this is Vietnam, South Vietnam. Forrest Fenn's base was down here in Toy Hall. Okay, and right up and on here, see Cunyon, I think it's how you pronounce it. And this orange thing that I drew here is QL-19. It was called. Okay, and basically, it was a major supply route where we would bring the Navy would come in here and they would bring supplies to the Army base that was here, Camp Ratcliffe, which is where the helicopter probably was that took Forrest Fenn up here. And then it goes through Mangang Pass and it comes down to Pleiku. And the interesting thing about this place is that in the French Indochina War, well, let me step back a minute. Forrest Fenn said, if you read anything at Thrill Chase, read My War for Me. And I did. So I decided that when I'm reading My War for Me, I'm going to make this interesting. And I'm going to find where Forrest Fenn's secret spot is in Vietnam. I want to find those waterfalls. I want to find the grave that he tripped over. This didn't all come as a result of Forrest Fenn. I happen to know people that were in the Navy that fought in Vietnam longer than Forrest was there. And unlike Forrest, they weren't flying up at thousands of feet. They were boots on the ground or flying at a helicopter 500 feet above the ground or 100 feet, 200 feet above the ground. And most of the fighting that they did during Vietnam was along this road because it was being used again as a major supply route. And anyway, just to keep a long story short, during the French Indochina War, the French were based here. And what happened was their officers told them to leave, and they went east, and they went over to a place called Anki Pass. Okay, and they fought here. They had a lot of battling going on during the Indochina War. So from back home, they got message that said, "Head back, retreat." So the French started retreating back down this road, and right here, you can Google it. Mobile Group 100 got ambushed, and they lost 1,600 men. There was dead bodies all over this road, all the way up here through the pass. And then they got a bunch of men died at Dead Man's Curve. They never made it back. Okay, long story short. So the very next day, the French surrendered, then lost the Indochina War. That's basically what happened. So this happened in the 1950s, 1954, I think, when they were killed here. And that was the end of the Indochina War, right? So all those men died. And what they did eventually is that these people, the South Vietnamese people, they didn't obviously want bodies all over the place. So what they did is they took all the bodies up and they made cemeteries up here, and they buried them all in holes, standing position facing west, which is where France is. And it was all just, I guess, due to the beliefs that these people had. Now, eventually, these graves were all, I forgot what the term is for it, but most of the bodies that they could locate the next of kin were removed and sent back to the France. So, but they lost 1,600 men in one day, wiped out on this road right here along this road. Because what happened was when they started heading back, the enemy came in this way and ambushed them, cut them off. There was no Camp Ratcliffe, obviously. This wasn't built until the 60s, which is the same time Forrest Fenn's base was built. So this army camp up here, they actually called it the golf course because they joked around because there was a lot of officers up here and stuff like that. So this is a major supply route even during Vietnam. But if you read Forrest Fenn's story, he talks about finding the grave and he mentions his flight over and over. And he kind of describes how long it would take to get there. And he's always saying that it was under his wing at 11 o'clock, and he would see this and I'm going to go back there one day, make sure I don't get killed. And of course, when Forrest was shot down the first time, it was down by Ho Chi Minh City. The second time he was shot down was up here at Chapon in Laos. Okay. And this purple line is the demilitarized zone. So he was shot down here. And then after he was rescued, he was taken to this place before he went home, one day before he went home, right? So anyway, then of course he claimed, you know the story. He took his friend picked him up, took him in a helicopter to the cemetery. He went out, and it turned out to be a big nothing. But this is the cemetery that he was talking about, and you could go around in here and play around on the different settings. The resolution ain't that great because this is in Vietnam, but it would you could see the grave sites. Some of them, because what they did is they put lime in the grave to help it decay, and all the lime would show up as white spots. But like I said, there really just no graves, huge graves up here, a lot of men, you know, but there's nobody in the graves now for the most part, right? So Forrest Fenn was up here. So anyway, I showed that to Forrest Fenn. And by the way, there was a radio station here. And that's going to become important in a second. So the radio station, this road is known as Mangang Pass. And that was a dangerous pass, right? So the cemetery's up here, and they used to have a lot of men that would come up here during Vietnam, and they would use this station because we didn't have radar for the airplanes here because it's Vietnam. So we had to set up temporary radar. So they did have radar. So I don't know why Toby was saying they didn't, but they did. They knew it. Forrest Fenn used it, and it was here. This is one of the places right here. It's gone now, but that's where it was. And they have all these roads leading up there. You can see I did them in red. How the army or whatever would go up there to service these radio stations. Now, anyway, I made a video of this back in 2018, and Forrest Fenn, I sent it to him, and he liked the video, and he told me he congratulated me. Good congratulations on your research. But on that video, I said that I don't believe Forrest Fenn went here. And the reason why I don't believe is because I know people that were fighting at the same time that he was here. And this was a hotbed. I can't imagine him going up there the day that he said he went there. Who's going to take a helicopter out of here and then fly up into that area? Because I know that's where he went. He congratulated me on it, right? So who's going to do that? I don't believe he did that. I mean, your commanding officer would be really pissed off if you got caught that you are taking a risk going into enemy territory. But you know, and he got back to me on that. He goes, you know, congratulations on your research, you know, job well done. But he said you were wrong on 2 points, and it was funny. The one of them is he said you're pronouncing Tuha wrong. He said Taha. He told me how to pronounce it. And he said the second thing you're wrong about. He goes, I did go there because he said you got to remember that I had access to information that would let me know where the hotspots were because that's where they would do their bombing runs. So Forrest Fenn actually bombed this area probably at one point or north of here. He didn't just bomb up in North Vietnam because you got to remember that he came in during the time of the war that it was happening in South Vietnam because they were being attacked by people in South Vietnam. Okay, and he would some places his base was bombed. Okay, so here's QAnon. You know, his base is down here. So that blue line would be the flight that he took. Okay, and I'll show you another map of it. So there's kind of a map. There's QAnon. This is QL19. Goes right past Mangang Pass, and it goes to Pleiku. And up here is where all the graves are, right? And if you really research this, you can find out what all this means. PK22 and all of this stuff. Because the Vietnam War, they talked about this a lot. If you go to the Vietnam websites, and you can read about their experience along this road. And basically, what almost happened is when Forrest Fenn was there, we almost made the same mistake the French did, and we were ambushed there, and we almost had a big loss. Oh, one more thing I want to show you about that. Here's Alice in Chains, the Rooster song. And if you go in there, I think the first one's at 2 minutes and 24 seconds. I'm not going to play it because I'll get a copyright warning, and they'll turn the sound off in this. But do you see that? And now here I can challenge you. Go watch this video again on your own. Alice in Chains, Rooster. And it appears a couple more times. I want you to go ahead and find it. And it's just really odd now that when I watched this video and I picked up, I'm like, I stopped it right there on that frame, 2 minutes and 24 seconds. And there it is, you know. And they're talking about a different ambush site during Vietnam. But This again, this is the Pleiku, but this is the QL-19 right here. Okay, there's Cambodia and stuff. But yeah, this, I mean, this is all like really, I mean, interesting stuff. And like I said, I knew he passed away before Forrest Fenn. He died in 2015, I want to say. John Blakicki, his name was. And I told Forrest Fenn about him, and I showed Forrest Fenn his badge number and just all of that. And I discussed that after I replied to Forrest Fenn when he congratulated me. And I said, yeah, I said, I had a friend in Vietnam that lived down the street from me. And I said, he he was really sick. He only had one lung. He was shot in the head in the war. He was shot twice. Like Forrest Fenn, he had two Purple Hearts. He was shot in the head. They had to put a plate in his head. And then the other time he was shot, he was it was just in the leg or something the first time. But when he got shot in the head, they sent him home. Finally, he was only 19 years old when he went to Vietnam. Very sad. And he's older than me, of course, but I helped him when and it was really weird because he lived down the street from me in New Jersey, right? Like 8 houses away, right? And then he moved out of New Jersey. And then later, my wife and I moved to Minnesota, and then we moved down to Florida. And I ordered pizza one day, right? And the guy comes to deliver the pizza. Guess who it was? It was this guy's son. And it come to turn out that he lives around like a half a mile away from me in the same town in Florida. So, I mean, I went over and met him and stuff, and we talked. I'm like, what do you, like, I guess I'm following you around. We end up all in the same town and stuff. Really cool. But he was getting really sick, you know, from due to the war injuries. And he had like all kinds of lung problems and stuff because of the Agent Orange and just all of the stuff that he had got into. And he died as a result of it. So during like near the end, he didn't have anything that he could really do other than hang around the house. So I went over and I set him up with a computer and I set him up with a bunch of music and got his internet stuff working. And he was really appreciated it, you know. And we used to joke all the time, but it was very sad talking to that guy. And I know what Forrest means in my war for me because when I would talk to John back home, we were on the fire department together. And they wouldn't do this often. Like Forrest Fenn said, if you see a warrior sitting alone, don't approach them and don't talk. I know what he means by that because I would be talking to John, and out of the blue, he would just start bawling his eyes out. I'm like, "What's up, man?" And he's like, "Troy, I mean, I killed women and children." And I mean, it's just, I mean, you got to realize that. You know how Forrest Fenn said that he looked into the pre-sci and he was ready to shoot all those people, and then he realized that it was a wedding that was going on or something, right? Well, this guy, now Forrest Fenn is 1,000 feet or 2,000 feet in the air, moving at the speed of sound. Okay. But my friend was actually boots on the ground or 100 feet in the air, hanging out of a helicopter. And you want to talk about close up. And they had to do that because what would happen is a lot of times, a lot of these soldiers would go down and they would feel bad. But remember that the South Vietnamese were kind of like being rebels, some of them. And they were fighting against the Americans that were defending South Vietnam. It was a very sick war, right? And you would walk into a group of people, and the females would take the kids and have live grenades on them and send them running into an unsuspecting soldier and blow them up, kill them. So as a result of that, when they went into places that they were receiving, return fire, in other words, it was obviously an enemy. They didn't just go and shoot anybody. But he's seen, like what Forrest Fenn seen, a frozen screenshot of that priest and the people that he was about to kill. Okay, you got to imagine that in your face, you're looking through the sight on your machine gun up on a helicopter, and you're looking right in a woman or a child's face, and you got to blow their fucking head off. That's what war was. And that's kind of what the Rooster song is about. This is just crazy thing. So anyway, I don't want to dwell on it that long, but I don't know how many of you knew that about Rooster. Next time you listen to it, you'll appreciate it a little bit more. So here we are back in Google Earth, and I don't want to talk about this song either, but here's that same blue fight that Forrest Fenn would have took if he was based in Kerwin. And you can see my video about this because this is the This red line is the 109 east. I mean, this is 109 west. And in Vietnam, the red line that goes down to Tohoa is 109 east. So it's the same longitude, just around the other side of the earth, right? So if you took that same flight, that same distance, it actually takes you right over Fishing Bridge area, right over Skippy's Rock, where Skippy is at the falls, right over Grebe Lake, and it would drop you off right someplace in the middle of the mountains here. Which was interesting. Now, Forrest Fenn didn't congratulate me on that; he didn't know it. But anyway, that flight's taking you into there, and this is what I found. But then I realized that you got to mirror everything because we're over on the other side of the earth. So instead of going westerly, we're going to go easterly, and that same flight happens to take you right up here over the Bighorn Mountains. And instead of Mangyang Pass, it's Medicine Wheel Pass. So literally everything. So if you were based down in Kerwin, you'd be coming up from your supply route, and this would be enemy. This would be where all the graves are, which matches this being a place they would go to pray or a place of death, or and so on and so forth. It's pretty weird stuff. And it would, of course, would be the same thing here if you flipped it back in Yellowstone, because like I said, Grebe Lake is where he took everybody to die. And like I said, we're flying right over Skippy. If I was searching in Yellowstone, this blows away 9 Mile. I mean, this is what I mean when I say 9 Mile. But the problem is the stuff I'm talking to you right now, and this is how you get into rabbit holes. It doesn't have anything to do with the poem. Forrest Fenn doesn't mention Vietnam in the poem. He doesn't mention helicopter flights. You don't need to know that he was in the war. You don't need to know any of that. So clearly, that's there. It might be a hint, right? But if you're going to be a poem purist, you're not supposed to look at the hints. So you've got to get your solve to work without relying on the hints. Because if I wanted to rely on hints, I could just refer to My War for Me and say, there you go. You see exactly, literally, if you took this point and mirrored it across the 109, you'd be sitting on top of the medicine wheel. I mean, literally. So, and everything described in the book, he's flying right over it here. Forget about West Yellowstone. It wasn't in Montana, right? And like I said, Madison Junction doesn't qualify as warm water salt. Doesn't qualify with the poem, and it also it doesn't work because Forrest Fenn said you have to be able to replicate that place at least once down in New Mexico. And I don't want to talk about that again and again and again. You can refer to my other video, but there's no way that that's warm water salt. I would love it to be. It was my warm water salt, like I told you earlier in either part 1 or part 2 of this. I said, that was my first saw was at Grebe Lake. But if you're really hooked on Yellowstone, and you like the hints and you're not a poem purist, I mean, this is some amazing stuff here. Skippy's at this rock. We got Fishing Bridge. The Fenn family stayed right here when they stayed in Yellowstone. Forget about West Yellowstone. That was later. They stayed here at Fishing Bridge. The main fishing spot here is here. It's not over here. And it's not on the fire hole where he bathed and all. That's all stuff that people are just off in la la land dreaming. That's not, and second of all, he's sending you upstream. He's not sending you downstream. We know he's not sending you down in the canyon. So there's no way that saw would work. But look at all the cool stuff if you did want to look in Yellowstone. And that takes you up near where the rivers are, where the bathing river, or I forgot what it's called, and you go down to the Gardner River, and you go off into Gardner, Montana, and follow the Yellowstone River. I mean, now you're in the wrong state. Of course, you're in Montana, but you get my point. So, and then you got Mammoth Hot Springs up here. There's plenty of things going, and a lot of people had searches here. And I know some people were searching down around here. To me, all of those areas are far, far, far better than this. And this area is so heavily traveled, and so is this. But maybe Grebe Lake, not so much. I don't know. That's some pretty cool stuff. So since we're on the topic here, again, we're not really talking about the Saab itself or being from a poem purist point of view, we're talking about external hints like the Vietnam and My War for Me. There's a guy named, you know, all the talk about Amelia Earhart. Well, obviously that sends you to Kerwin, but there's another thing people don't realize. Amelia Earhart, when she died or when she was lost at sea, she had a navigator, and the navigator's name was Fred Nonan. Okay. Now, Fred Nonan was trying to pioneer a technique where he would use celestial navigation, which means navigate with the stars, right? Which is the way seafaring people travel. Like I mentioned to you before about Fomalhaut being a navigation star. Well, that's the kind of stuff that Fred did. Amelia, of course, was more of a pilot where she would do the radio and all of that stuff, but she wasn't really good at that radio. We found out that was one of the things that might have led to her demise. But here's the interesting part. I believe there's some politics involved because Fred Noonan, at the time that they did this flight, transoceanic flight was known to be very dangerous and nobody wanted to do it, right? So I think he worked for Delta Airlines. I don't remember. It was one of the first early airlines. And they wanted him during that flight with Amelia was supposed to be a publicity stunt, the whole thing. And what they wanted to do was when the flight completed, they were going to boast and say, look at how well, we are able to navigate the ocean. Because they thought that, because remember, you can't just put navigation beacons in the middle of the ocean like they do on land. So how are airplanes going to fly? And of course, Forrest Fenn's a pilot, right? He would know all this stuff. That's probably why he got into Amelia Earhart. But Forrest also knew that Amelia Earhart's navigator was into using the stars to navigate. And I believe, and I got into an argument with the guy over at the Amelia Earhart forums because I don't care who he is, but he's just a guy that's been searching for Amelia Earhart for a long time. But I basically told him, I said, did you think about this? And I started offering up suggestions, and man, did he get pissed off. But anyway, I told him, I said, I think it's Fred's fault that Amelia died. And he said, what? No, it was Amelia. She didn't have the radio and this and that. I said, I think it's Fred. He was a navigator. And I explained it. I said, here's what I think happened. They were flying, easterly, okay? And they were on the other side of the international date line, all right? So in other words, at one point, just before they got to their destination, they were going to change over to the date line, right? To earlier time. And the other time is when they flew over that area, the majority of that flight was done in the dark. Okay. So he was able to see the stars. That's how they were going to navigate. That was the whole point, right? What I believe that happened was it's stormy out and he couldn't see the stars. So what he was doing is he was trying to use her radio references and he was doing what they call dead reckoning. And he would try to estimate where he thought they were based on her flight speed, how fast were they traveling, which direction were they traveling, so on and so forth, right? And I believe that they got essentially progressively off and they were farther south than they thought they were. Because the other thing, not only did they have to cross the international date line, they crossed over the equator. And both of those two events happened right where Howland Island is, which we're supposed to land. So I believe what happened was when the sun came up, remember the sunrise and the whole thing about the sun? When the sun came up, they were expecting to see the sun come up right over Howland Island, and it didn't. The sun was at a different angle in the sky. And they were all friggin' confused, but it was already too late, okay? They were 200 miles. In my opinion, they were 200 miles south, roughly 150, 200 miles south. And she went down in a coral reef, where I think the plane went down. And this guy totally disagreed with me. Anyway, I did a video about it. You can check it out. And I explained why I have that theory. And I went into that celestial program and I set my date back to the day that Fred and Amelia Earhart took that flight. And I tracked what went on. And I plotted all the points where she made radio contact and where they lost contact. And I estimated where they went off track. Now this guy said, no, he goes, you're calling it an island. I did mistakenly call it an island. It's coral reef. But here's the deal. That coral reef sits at sea level of, like, let's say 6 inches or 1 foot below sea level. Okay, 1 foot. Now, so when you're flying, if you're at 8,000 feet, now she was flying at 2,000 feet when they were lost, or 1,000 feet. So she was burning a ton of fuel because she was flying so close to the ocean, right? Now, when you see something like that in the early morning, you would see it when it's under the water and you would know that it's a coral reef. But here's the thing. When I looked at what was going on in the Stellarium, if you look right above their airplane, at the time that the plane got lost, the moon was directly above them. Now, I don't know how many of you people notice, but the moon affects their tides and it affects the depth of the ocean. And what it essentially does is wherever the moon is, it pushes the ocean down up to 6 feet down, like 3 to feet. So now imagine if by normal day you have something sitting at a foot below sea level. Well, when the moon is over you, it's not 1 foot below sea level. It's going to be 3 or 4 feet above sea level. And when you look at that coral reef, it looks very similar to what you would see when you fly to Howland Island. And I believe that she knew it wasn't Howland Island, obviously. But if you're going to put a plane down because you're running out of fuel, that would probably be the best place to do it, because at least you're sitting 5 feet above sea level. Now at nighttime, you're going to have a problem because it's going to be 1 foot below sea level, but at least it's not 18,000 feet below sea level, which is what the ocean is. So they put down there. Now here's the problem. Ships went out to go rescue them. But this was in an area where there's a ridge under the ocean that ships can't go over because all these coral reefs are too close to the surface. The ship would bottom out. So they ended up going around it and they didn't see them, in my opinion. All totally a guess. I'm no expert. I do know something about navigating by sea because I took a Coast Guard course when I had my boat. All right. And you had to know how to navigate to pass the course to get certified as like a captain, right? So I did that. And then the other thing is, I know that, and I've learned through this how to do the navigation. Now, Forrest Fenn had a guy he was friends with, and his name was Mike Kammerer. Mike Kammerer lived in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and they were good friends. Mike Kammerer was rich, probably had a lot more money than Forrest did. And he also had a home down in Santa Fe. And Forrest Fenn did a lot of stories about that guy. But anyway, that guy was a nut about Amelia Earhart. He literally had a plane ready to go that if anybody had a solution or anything where they thought the plane might be, and you convinced him of that, he would fund the entire trip to bring them out over the ocean to go locate the wreck. That's how much he was into Amelia Earhart, Mike Kammerer. So I believe that, Forrest, I wish he would have been alive to talk to him about this kind of stuff, because you got to remember that Forrest Fenn was an airplane pilot. He knew how to fly planes. And that's what Amelia Earhart was doing. But the key is they were testing celestial navigation for crossing the oceans, because there are no beacons there. Right? And like I said, that's, to me, another reference to the medicine wheel. And not only that, check this out. This is on the top of Medicine Mountain. This is a radar beacon, okay? This beacon was used by the Air Force in the 1960s. What was it used for? It was used to do simulated bombing runs all up and down this basin. It's right here. That dome is right here. You can see it, okay? Forrest Fenn was a radio operator. Forrest Fenn is probably well aware of that dome. Forrest Fenn may even been up here for some training, because like I told you in my other video, over by Powell, it was either Powell or somewhere between here, there was a secret Air Force base when they were doing the bombing run tests. And I actually asked Forrest if he was ever there. He never answered me, of course, but he never would answer something like that especially if he knew that what I was doing here. I'm getting close to my sob. He's not going to do that, but yeah, it's very interesting stuff. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to say in this video. You could look at if you want to look for other external hints. When you read about Forrest Fenn flying over Philadelphia and putting his thumb over Philadelphia and saying he covered up all that people, that's clearly a reference to the Tom Hanks movie and also what the movie was based on, Apollo 13. The Apollo 13 was where astronaut Lovell was. And in Apollo 8, I think it was, Lovell was the first commander to actually go behind the moon on the dark side of the moon. And when you were coming out from the dark side of the moon, he looked at the Earth and he goes, "Wow, I can cover up billions of people on the Earth." And he held his thumb out, his left thumb. Okay, that's a direct reference to Lovell, in my opinion. No doubt, no doubt about it. It's Apollo 13, right? I mean, everything fits, right? It's really cool. So anyway, the first time they wanted to land on the moon, they couldn't do it. They had to turn around and come back to the United States, back to Earth. And you want to know why they couldn't do it? Guess what failed? Their oxygen system. Now, you know how Forrest Fenn says in that story that he looked down, I would always, when I was flying above 50,000 feet, in other words, higher, there's no atmosphere there. Your blood will boil and, so I would look at the blinking light, always look at the blinking light. And the blinking light, would be his oxygen sensor. He tells you that. Well, that's exactly why they had to turn around and come back, because they couldn't land on the moon. Their oxygen system failed. And Lovell was on that flight. So that was an indirect reference to here, clearly. So there's so many things. And the other one is George Friesen. Okay. When and everybody knows this is, like I said, this has nothing to do with the poem, but Forrest Fenn, there's a place over here on this road that goes from Cody all the way up into the Yellowstone. There's there's a Blackwater Creek Fire Memorial here. Right next to that is Mummy Joe's Cave. And in the 1960s, Forrest Fenn did a scrapbook that he was up there and he actually got a knife, I think it was, or something. But he was friends with George Friesen. George Friesen, of course, was an archaeologist. Right? So he was there when that was being excavated. Now, George Friesen, actually, when he was a kid, he grew up west of the Bighorn Mountains, and he went to a one-room schoolhouse. Lower Shelf Schoolhouse, one-room, historical. Could that be where he went? I don't know. That'd be it, right? I don't know. West of there. Also, I think it was somewhere over here. I don't remember. I don't have all this because I offloaded a lot of this stuff when the chase is over. But George Friesen did some research up here into Clovis points. They found some Clovis up here. They also found red ochre. And they found all this stuff. Now, remember what I was telling you about before, that the Paleo Indians would come down, and I showed you, they would come down right along the Bighorn Mountains. That's how they went down. And then, all the stuff that you see, here's the hole in the wall. All the clues in Forrest Fenn's poem. Hell's Half Acre, right? Down in Laramie, down here is where there's all the dinosaur stuff that they found. And you need to remember, if you go further back in history, this whole area was all underwater. So you can actually find alligator skeletons up here and palm tree fossils. Because of the way the Earth's crust shifts over to the core, this area down here at one point, millions of years ago, used to be way down by where current day Arizona is, the crust. And it's slowly moving, I think, northeast. So eventually, this hole that's under Yellowstone, it's not going to be there anymore. It's going to be burning something else, because all of this stuff, the Earth's crust and Yellowstone, is all going to move up this way. I mean, in hundreds of millions of years. It's all heading up this way. So, yeah. So George Friesen, I mean, he did so many scrapbooks about that guy and other archaeologists and stuff. And that guy was really interested in the bighorns, if you look at the research of that. So are you going to tell me Forrest Fenn is over here at Mummy Joe's Cave with George Friesen hanging out, and they're not going to talk about all the discoveries he had over here? Do you not think, and they're all out of Cody, do you not think he's going to bring them over here, perhaps down to Laramie? We already know he brought him down here because he was talking about the Spanish suit of armor that was found down here. So, yeah. And here's the really odd thing, and I'm going to end it with this. George Friesen died the same day Forrest Fenn did. September 7th, 2010. Peace.